A/B testing. In today's marketplace, a marketer has to prove the value of everything they do. We've seen some outrageous new technology there, and it'd be great to just say, yeah, let's do all of these things. But sadly, when you go to the person making the financial decisions, you have to say, well, I think this will give me this much return on investment. Now, the only way to do that, and to do it well, is using A/B testing. Unfortunately, if you don't do this properly, you'll end up really diluting the customer experience. You'll really massively overestimate the effect of what you're doing, and you can actually be negatively impacting your bottom line. Now, however, done right, it can pretty much guarantee that you'll see incremental revenue from the changes that you make. It is pure science applied to a business to increase revenue, and it does actually work. So what we need to do is kind of a little bit of a change in mentality. I'm sure a lot of you have used an A/B testing platform before in the past, and you might have gone into the dashboard and you've seen, okay, cool, there's 5, 10, 20 tests, each with a 40% uplift. This is fantastic. You go to the next person, you look at all the good work we're doing. We're getting all these massive green ticks, statistical significance, wonderful, way. And then your CFO turns around and goes, nah, none of that. Haven't seen a thing. What is this? They're just, okay, great. It's a fantasy world, right? So in today's talk, I'm going to give you some of the concepts that help you understand how that happens, and then give you the tools to develop a successful A/B testing campaign, which means you're actually going to see this incremental revenue uplift. So the first concept is the test is not the truth. The point of an A/B test is to predict in the future what effect will this change have on my conversion rate. And that's the important point. It's a prediction. Prediction's hard. And with every prediction, there is an uncertainty associated with that. And actually, what an A/B testing framework should be doing is understanding the level of uncertainty so that you can go forward and say, with certainty, how uncertain you are. I know that sounds like quite a weird thing to say, but that's actually the point here. So there's some concepts that we need to go through. I'm going to talk through these in detail, but basically, a sensible hypothesis beats throwing mud at a wall. I'm sure you all know that. False positives are always going to be a problem. Test validation is pretty much the way to fix them. If you don't have statistical power, you literally can't test anything. And the key to doing that is sample size. Sample size is literally everything. And at the end, I'm going to go through a worked example of one person doing it the right way and doing it the wrong way, and seeing what difference that actually makes to what you receive and what you observe. So, firstly, start with a sensible hypothesis. I'm Bill, I'm Matt. That's a clear difference, right? The change in color of the ties, that's pretty subtle. Right? You might not have seen that. And it's the same with A/B testing. We want to do things that are actually going to change behavior. If you put yourself in your user's shoes, doing a multivariate test, changing 400 variations of margins, fonts, and button colors, that's not going to do anything. Putting a stock pointer, that's actually having a behavioral effect. That's something that's going to change the way you react with the site and change your behavior. A really important point to get across, a guy called Theodore Sturgeon said it, 90% of everything is crap. And sadly, the same is true with A/B testing. You might think you have 100 perfect ideas, but realistically, most of the ideas you have, when you test them, don't do what you think they're going to do. And that's why A/B testing is so bloody important. Because without it, you're just flying blind, and you're doing things that sound good, but you have no idea what the actual effect is. So changing that 90% to 80% of them being crap, or 70% of these things being crap, that is a big, big impact. And to do that, you need data, you need to analyze it well, and you need to have accurate results from that. So data helps you come up with these sensible hypotheses, rather than just testing button color changes and random things that can be moved around with a WYSIWYG. That's not necessarily going to do anything. False positives. Graham mentioned this, and this is a really important concept. I'm going to give a really stupid example here. I take a pregnancy test, and it comes back positive. Now, if you haven't noticed, I am a man, and the test is wrong here. I mean, it's wrong. I'm not going to have a baby in 9 months. 6 months, that'd be bad. In 9 months, and God, I don't know anything, do I? I'm not going to have a baby in 9 months, and the point is, your A/B testing result might not give you that result in 9 months. We're going to have false positives. Sometimes the test prediction is wrong. We incorrectly labeled something that isn't going to win, that isn't going to drive uplift, as something that is. So clearly, a pretty important thing to do is to minimize the number of false positives we're going to get. And the way we do that is we define there's a threshold for success. A lot of people use the term statistical significance for this, and we do too. We say that if a test has a probability of an uplift of 95% or over, fantastic, cut it, it's a winner, we'll put this to the winning pile. We'll label it a winner. That sounds great, but let's use that framework. Let's run 100 tests that don't do anything. Literally, we just split traffic, we don't do anything. This is called an AA test. We use our framework, we say, okay, if they're 95% probability of them winning, of them beating the control, we'll say it's a winner. Now, using our framework, obviously, we're going to be wrong 5% of the time. We'll label 5 of these nothing tests as winners. So you can't escape this false positive scenario. It's just going to happen. It all depends on where you make that cut. If we'd said 90% was our threshold for probability, we'd have 10 false positives in our 100 tests that don't do anything. So you can keep raising the bar, but you're always going to get some. That's the nature of a probability. It's not perfect, it's not certain. But there is something you can do. You can get a second opinion. If I run 100 different button color tests, I might get 5 wins or 6 wins. Now, which of those actually did something? Who knows? But if we test them again, the probability of us seeing 2 false positives goes from 1 in 20 to 1 in 400. So you validate. And not a lot of people validate at the moment, but it's crucial to understanding which tests were false positives and which tests actually drive an uplift. At Qubit, we do kind of like a slow burn validation where we have 95% of traffic on the winning test and 5% as a control. So you do get some of the benefits of a winning test rather than having to check everything twice at 50-50. So we've got these two cons. We've got false positive and we've got validation. But as well as a false positive, there's the other side of the coin here, to excuse the pun with that. We can incorrectly label a test as not a winner when it would have won. And in a way, that's worse, right? We can miss out on putting things that would actually increase revenue on our businesses live because we didn't test properly. Now, the way we usually explain this is, if imagine I give you 2 coins. One of these coins lands heads 55% of the time. The other coin lands heads 50% of the time. So you know they're different. I'll give them to you and I say, right, flip these coins. Tell me which one is the weighted coin. If you get it right, I'll give you £1 million. If you get it wrong, or $1 million, sorry. If you get it wrong, you can give me $1 million. And these actually are the kind of numbers we're talking about for a lot of e-commerce businesses. Like, these are big numbers you could be getting. And obviously what you do, you flip them. And at 10 flips, you might see 6 heads and 4 heads. Are you going to bet $1 million on that? I certainly wouldn't, right? I don't have the power to tell the difference there. And I keep going. I do 100. Maybe I do 10,000. At some stage, I'm going to see a big enough difference between these two that I'll be confident in the results. Now, how confident and how likely we are to see that difference, that's the power of the test. It's called Siskel Power, and it is incredibly important. And the cool thing is we can, well, it's not cool at all. You can do maths and work out how likely you are to label a test as a winner, when it is a winner, given a certain amount of data. So that's the next point.
How many flips?
I'll come to that, Simon. I'll tell you how many flips. Well, he's spoiled now. It's 1,564 flips, if you wanted to know. So it would be great to have no false negatives, no false positives. That would be fantastic. But just as with the coins, there's a limit to how many times you have to flip, right? And with an A/B test, there's a limit to how many people we have on a website. And there's a limit to how long we're prepared to wait before making a decision. So sadly, we do have to compromise here. That little kid's our version of a compromise here. Yeah, poor guy. So what we do is we say that we will collect enough data to detect a difference, if that difference exists, 8 times out of 10. So say we have 10 absolute corking ideas that are all going to be winners. Using our framework, we'll collect enough data to detect 8 out of 10 of them. We'd love to detect 9, we'd love to detect 10, but it's just not feasible given the amount of traffic most websites get. And you can alter this, obviously. So you calculate sample size, because if you don't calculate the sample size, you don't know how many people you need to make sure that you're going to get that winning difference. So you're just going to be leaving money on the table. Now, you might think, well, what does this matter? These are just statistical terms. Like, really, this doesn't affect me. I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. This hopefully will kind of at least persuade you a little bit that that's not the case. So this is Mr. Bean's Jelly Beans commerce store. I think I found a niche here. No one's doing this yet. Well, so I'm gonna really come in this market. I'm Mr. Bean for the day. And Mr. Bean is going to test. This year he's going to do testing. So we're going to follow 2 parallel universes, one in which he tests, the way I said before. So you have a threshold for significance, you understand the power, you calculate sample size, you wait until you've reached sample size, and then you make a decision. Or he's also going to go for a slightly more naive way. He knows there's a statistical test involved, but he's just going to look at it every day. And then if it goes above 95%, he's going to be like, yep, winner, bam, done. Next test, let's go, let's get this done. So he's going to do 20 tests. This is the truth. This is what we know is going to happen. He does 20 tests. Of those 20 tests, 2 good tests. They'll have uplifts of 5%. This is good. He's also got 2 really bad ideas. He puts like, I don't know, pop-ups that come up every 5 seconds on the page, and we don't want to see that. So a good A/B testing framework obviously will predict there are 2 good tests. Here are the 2 good tests. Let's ignore everything else. And let's make sure we don't pick these ones. Because if we pick these ones, then we're in trouble, right? We're having a negative impact. So what happens when you compare them? So we know we've done 20 tests. We know 2 will be winners. Using the correct method, one I just told you about, we'll detect 3 winners. We'll label 3 of these tests as winners. We know we get false positives. That's fine. 1 out of 20 was a false positive. However, using the naive method, we see 9 winners, 7 false positives. And already you're thinking, well, 9 winners would look good on a dashboard, but we're going to see what happens, right? If we validate, brilliant. We're back down to 2. The correct method's on the money. And this is actually a really interesting bit. We know we had 2 5% uplifts. The correct method will approximately hit 5%. It's not going to be perfect. There's going to be some inaccuracy there. It's not a perfect estimate, but it's pretty good. And because the naive method encourages us to stop early, we get a massive overestimation of what's going on here. We'll see tests up to 40%, averaging about 15% per test. So you can imagine, you go to whoever is looking at these results, and you think, wow, this is looking pretty good. 9 times 15%, awesome, I am flying here. And then at the end of the year, you realize, oh, that didn't seem to happen. Plus, there's a pretty decent chance you put one of those bad tests live. So you're not doing as well as you could be doing. Clearly, the correct method gets you a better result. And not only do you get a better result, there's a couple of other really important points to think about when we're doing testing. Wasted resource. You've probably spent, 50K for your developer to go in and say, okay, let's put 7 tests live. Let's hard code these into the site. You didn't need to. They didn't do anything. Some of these things are actually doing bad things. What a waste of time. Also, the customer experience. You've now just chucked pop-ups all over the place where there was no need to put a pop-up. It didn't do anything, and you might degrade the customer experience. Alongside that, you now think that's a good idea. You haven't learned anything. You now think that these things are doing good, positive things, when in fact they're not. They do nothing. So next year, when you come around to do some more tests, you'll go, okay, well that thing worked last time, let's do it again. And you're just perpetuating ignorance about your customers. Whilst in the correct method, we actually get, okay, these 2 things are good, everything else was crap. 90% of my ideas didn't work, oh well, never mind, let's move on and learn from that. And ultimately, whoever you're going back to is either happy or pissed off that you lied to them about what you're going to get. So, little quick recap. Sensible hypothesis is going to beat throwing mud at the wall, polite mud at the wall. False positives are always a problem. Just got to deal with that, validate when you can. Statistical power, you have nothing. If you don't have the power to detect the difference, you won't detect the difference. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You have to have the sample size required to see the power of that test. So this means that you can now go out and ask some questions, and you can kind of scope out, okay, some of these vendors might be bullshitting a little bit about what they're doing. You can smoke out the data quackery as a service compared to people who are driving uplifts. Because that's what we're here to do. So if you ask these people, how do you know what to test? If they say, well, we've got a WYSIWYG, you can test anything. You don't want to test everything. You want to test the good ideas. And they're hard to come by. If you ask people, how do you calculate sample size? And they go, you don't need to do that. You clearly do. Like, mathematically, you do, otherwise it's not going to work. Oh, by the way, the example I gave you, if anyone wants to rerun the code for those simulations, I have that, so just email me and I can send it to you. So it's not just stuff we made up. It does actually make sense. They might ask you might also ask them, how do you account for false positives? If they again say, no, don't worry about that, they're all winners, you know that's not true. It can't be true. And finally, well, okay, given the fact we know you're going to get false positives, how do you validate that? How do I know I'm not wasting my time putting things lives that will do nothing? So these are the questions that you ask, and if they don't have an answer, then you can say, well, sorry, I'm calling bullshit on all of this. Give me some straight answers. And yeah, it's a cultural change. It's not nice to say, okay, no, I know last year I got 9 winning tests, and this year I'm only going to get 2. And it's hard to do that, and it's really nice to live in this fantasy world where we're getting loads of wins and green ticks. But hey, if we want to make businesses improve, then this is what we've got to do. This is the framework we've got to use. So there are operational barriers, but hopefully with the knowledge you've got now, you can go away and say, yeah, I'm doing this, this, and this, and next year the business will be better than it was this year. Thank you very much.